It is necessary that we move this bill. I agree. And I'm thankful for she and the ranking member for the movement on some of the commitments they made to me on programs that don't work within the small business area. I have multiple amendments, but due to the deference of the chairwoman, I will not call those up. I am going to call up two, and I want to explain both of them as I call it. Amendment number 184. Everybody was real excited about the GAO report that we looked at the first third of the federal government in terms of all the duplication. Now, we don't know the extent of that duplication, and we're going to have to do some hard work to really winnow out a lot of savings, but there are a lot of savings there. People don't agree with me on my estimate, but nobody knows these programs better than I do. I've been studying them for 6 years. There's at least $100 billion where we can save American taxpayers and actually do a better job through redesigning the programs and eliminating the bureaucracies that make them less than effective. But one of the things we need to do to help the GAO is have the agencies report to OMB and to us on a yearly basis their programs. There's at least 2,100 programs that we know of in the federal government. When GAO goes to look at this, it's very difficult for them to ferret it all out. We only have one agency that publishes a list of their programs every year, and that's the Department of Education. You can get a book. It's this thick. It's this thick, and it lists all their programs. Well, that's going to make it much easier for GAO to do the next third. And so this is a simple amendment that requires every agent, every department of all the cabinets to fulfill to OMB within a short period of time what are all your programs, and also to report to us. And when that happens, that's going to make the GAO much more effective in how it brings to us this next group of duplications and overlap. So it's a straightforward amendment. My hope is that it can be accepted. And I'd like unanimous consent to call up amendment number 184, which is that amendment, and then make it pending.
Is there an objection?
There's no objection, but I'd like to ask the senator.
Senator from Louisiana.
I actually like this amendment 184. The senator has spoken with me about it previously, and I think it has some merit. What I'd like to suggest, and I thank the senator for being cooperative, if he could identify the other number, what I'd like to suggest is if we could get a Democratic amendment slotted in between these, we might call them up, the three of them, your two, and then a Democratic one. What is the other number, Senator? May I ask
the other amendment number? The other amendment number is number 220. It's the ethanol blenders credit.
Would the senator mind explaining that amendment, and then I'll make sure that it's cleared on our side, and we'll see what we can do.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Let me ask the chair then. I understand my first amendment is up and pending. Is that correct?
Without objection. The clerk will report the amendment.
The senator from Oklahoma, Mr. Coburn, proposes an amendment numbered 184. At the end of Title V, add the following. Section, requirement to identify and describe programs. A, each fiscal year, the head of each federal agency shall, 1, identify and describe every program administered by the agency.
That the amendment be considered as read. And I would now,
without objection,
like to discuss amendment number 220. And I guess it's your intention, Madam Chairman, that I defer in calling that amendment up.
Senator from Louisiana.
If the chair would, I may not have any objection. We're just trying to get that cleared on our side. If the senator could take this time now to explain it, and we can get back to him on that in just a short order.
All right. Amendment 220 is about making sure that we don't send good money after bad. When you go to the pump today to buy gasoline that is blended with ethanol, you pay as a taxpayer $1.78 as a taxpayer before you ever pay the $3.50 or 51 cents that we're paying today per gallon through incentives, tax credits, and rebates for ethanol and blending. This doesn't take away all the incentives on corn-based ethanol. What it says is because we already have a mandate that says 15 billion gallons of ethanol must be available and put through the system this year, no longer is there a necessity to have a blender's credit to the tune of $6 billion a year. So what this bill does two things. One is it takes away a incentive that's no longer needed because we've already mandated that the ethanol is going to be there. But it saves us $6 billion that we're paying to firms that are going to do the business no matter whether we pay it or not. So it is silly to continue to spend $6 billion of American taxpayer money, of which almost $3 billion of it will be borrowed money from either the Federal Reserve or from the Chinese, to incentivize something that's already mandated to happen. If you look at ethanol, it's 2/3 as efficient when blended as gasoline. It gets poorer mileage. And there's no savings in terms of carbon output or pollution. So what we're doing is we're incentivizing the use of a fuel that goes against what most people would like to do environmentally. It causes us to markedly increase the cost of food, which we're seeing in our country and around the world today, and we're incentivizing something that's going to happen anyway. And so it's a straightforward amendment. It says on the blender's tax credit, we're no longer going to give a credit for something you already have a market you're going to do without it. I know some will say that's a tax increase. But when we send $6 billion to a small segment of American industry that it's not going to impact their sales at all, then what's the purpose for having tax credits? If we use tax credits or tax expenditures to expand the economy, and it's not expanding the economy any when we're doing it, why would we continue to do it? As part of the President's Deficit Commission, we looked at that and we said, it's a no-brainer. There's no reason you would incent something that's already mandated by law that has to happen. And I know it's a controversial subject for a lot of our colleagues from farm states, but the fact is worldwide sophistication in food preference has markedly increased. This is creating an enormous pressure in taking food stocks out of the human food chain and putting it into the energy chain. So we're not stopping that. There's still all the other credits that are available, all the other incentives and all the other mandates, but what we're saying is we shouldn't spend $6 billion of American taxpayer money that we don't have, by the way, we do not have it, for something that they're going to do anyway. The other point I'd make is we're now a net exporter of ethanol. A lot of people don't recognize that. Through November of 2010, we exported 397 million gallons of ethanol. That's almost 1 billion gallons since 2005. And not counting the blender's credit, but all the other credits, we're supporting that to the tune of about $1.20 a gallon. So we're subsidizing the consumption of ethanol in Europe to the tune of $1.20 a gallon. That makes no sense, when in fact we have significant energy needs ourselves. So my hope is that we'll consider this amendment, that we'll have a vote on it. I recognize it's going to be a close vote. My count's of 55, and I know we got to get 60, but I want the 45 members of our body to go home and explain to their constituents why we're sending $6 billion to something that's going to happen anyway. It's a gift. That's all it is. And we don't have $6 billion to spend that way. And the other point I'd make, with the trouble that we're in, we're not going to get out of it by cutting $200 billion at a time or $300 billion. We're going to get out of it $6 billion at a time. Senator Begich and I found $1 billion in the FAA bill from earmarks that have been tied up, no money spent on them in 10 years. That's $1 billion savings. So if we do it $6 billion, $1 billion, $5 billion, $3 billion, $2 billion at a time, pretty soon we're going to add up, and we're going to take some of the pressure off our country in terms of funding our debt. And the ultimate course has to be to convince the world that we get it, that we can't continue to borrow 40% of our expenditures in the world financial market and expect them to continue to loan us money. So it's a very straightforward amendment. My corn farmers in Oklahoma don't like it. I understand that. But it's about doing the right thing for our country, and now's the time to do it. And with that, I yield back the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate the cooperation of the senator from Oklahoma. We have been able to get his amendment number 184 pen